So, as you can see from the title, it says Holme Valley Parish Council and Kirklees Local Plan. And we have a reference group on the update to the local plan. So the background is that, as you probably know, updating local plans is a legal requirement. What I've done here is to put in lots of detail into the slides so that you don't have to make loads of notes, but I won't read everything verbatim. The Holme Valley Neighbourhood Plan is also in force. That was done in December 2021, but in 2024 November, Kirklees announced its intention to review its own local plan, and it was that kicked off our action, really. So why is Kirklees updating its local plan? Well, the red things really are the really important ones. It was quite clear that they wanted to develop more ambitious climate action policies. They also wanted to set up where development would be located. But for us, the important thing was producing locally distinctive planning policies. So that was the sort of background, if you like, to what Kirklees was saying they wanted to do. Kirklees is our, big unitary authority. So what did we decide to do? Well, get in there and quickly. We felt that we needed to get our act together and produce a response to the existing local plan and put together the things that we thought were essential before Kirklees actually produce their own update. In other words, get in there first and say, these are the things that we need for our area. The Holme Valley is very distinctive and particular. It's an area that is to the southwest of Huddersfield. Kirklees is a big authority with some heavy urban areas, and the Holme Valley is quite different from that. So it's very much a more rural area, which brings its own challenges, if you like, and makes it very distinctive because it covers small villages and towns. And the needs of its communities are really quite specific. Now, Kirklees set up an early engagement consultation. So that was the first thing really that we were attempting to respond to. So we set up an initial working group, and that had 7 councillors and 1 community member as part of it. Holme Valley Vision has been a long-standing network, which is hundreds of groups actually and individuals trying to make sure that we have something in common, share our ideas of what we want for the valley. So that group was established in order to decide really how do we best proceed, what are our objectives, and who needs to be involved. So in November 24, we had an outline plan for a partnership review group. So a group of people who were going to actually work on producing this initial response and indeed the final response when we get that far. And we made the case really that Holme Valley Parish Council is the only democratically elected body with a mandate to represent, should be the leaders of this partnership. But we wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. And so we were putting out calls to people to be involved, but making it clear that this was going to involve some work. You really needed to decide whether you could contribute or not. So in December, we emailed groups and active community groups particularly to say what we were about. There's a need to respond to the local plan, and would you like to join us? So by January this year, we'd got a group of people in place who'd said, yeah, we're up for this and we will contribute to this whole process. So the first task really was to respond to the early engagement call, and we decided to use a set of themes which we'd identified. Now, because time was really short, it was really a pretty fast and dirty process. I'm sure a number of you are familiar with having to respond quickly to things. And we felt we needed to do that to show that we were willing to be engaged right from the word go. We have, well, I think we are really quite lucky. Maybe it's a function of the size of our parish council or the area or its distinctive characteristics. But as you can see from the list there, we've got representatives from a whole range of organisations. So the Conservation Group, Eco Homes, River Home Connections, business associations, transport, and the list goes on. Plus 6 councillors. And we also said we'll leave an open invitation here for people to come in as time went on. So when we were approaching the early engagement, we decided that it was impossible to respond to every area in the local plan, but what we wanted to make clear right from the word go was that we should incorporate and provide evidence of the ways in which climate emergency matters can and should be addressed. So even in the early engagement response, which, as I say, was, fast and dirty, we were talking about climate emergency and climate action. And our response covered 6 areas, as you can see: farming and food security, green belt, grey belt, heritage, housing, transport, and the River Home Connections. And I'll talk a bit about their contributions a bit later on. But the other areas, mineral and economy, etc., would be addressed in the later plans, but we didn't have time to do that in the first instance. So what we were really, really pleased about, and I'm sure this will resonate with a number of you, is you have, shall we say, some challenges in terms of communicating and engaging with the local council and having a real solid partnership. Well, they came back to us, the woman who's the lead for the local plan review came back to us and said, yeah, we want to work with you very closely. We're really glad that you're taking an active part in this and that you want to work with us. And they asked us to continue to engage actively. Wonderful. Suggest potential sites. Yep. Feedback on the local policies most used, things that aren't working and why, but also new areas of policy would be useful. And really importantly, to continue to promote and update on consultations. So doing that, reaching out to the local community in every way we could think of, really. So what we'd got then was a number of things that were in place already. We'd got the Holme Valley Parish Council, which had done a response to the Peak District National Park, which takes up about 1/3 of the Holme Valley. So they had been and are extremely proactive in engaging in a local plan and doing an update and review in line with the requirements. So we did a response to that because, and this is why I'm particularly involved, my ward is the Upper Holme Valley, which is part of the Peak District National Park in large part. So we had a consultation with residents of Holme Village, which is right, I don't know how many of you know this area, but you probably have seen pictures of Holme Moss when you were avidly watching the Tour de France or the Tour de Yorkshire. Well, that's in our area. So we did a response on behalf of Holme Village. We also did a range of engagements around food and security. That was the area that I'd said I would lead on. So we did some focus groups with students at local schools. We had a meeting with the farmers in the valley, or some of the valleys up in Holme, and we also did a survey of food and drink festival visitors and stall holders. All 3 of those attempting to get flesh on the bones, if you like, of the sorts of things that we felt we needed to include, or that came up and we needed to include in our response. So just a bit more background, really. As I said, approximately 1/3 of parish council lies within the PDT. Here is this is some of the comments that came out of that response to the Peak District National Park. They talked about the new powers of the Environment Act being used, and they talked about the requirements being set for developments outside the biodiversity net games. The residents' views, this is the people up in Holme Village, were quite clear about two things. They didn't think that the Peak Park should go beyond the mandatory requirements. They thought that they should be subjected to the same rules and developments as other people. And they also said that they thought that the tightest possible restrictions are needed, as you can see, to conserve and enhance the natural zone. So some really concrete ideas, if you like, coming out from community groups. What I've done here is to just put together the headlines that came out of our pulling together ideas for that early engagement. As far as agriculture and food are concerned, there was a lot of talk about local produce and having outlets for local produce. There were people talking about the built heritage being protected and enhanced. The housing one was really one of the big ones. I'm sure that's a familiar story. The provision of suitable and affordable housing, and also the linkage, if you like, to transport locally, and the need for simplified and integrated services. But there was a lot more than that. So these, as I say, are just the headlines, and I can share more information if people are interested afterwards. So what did we look at in terms of farming and food? We found that people were saying, and we were identifying really, that the existing plan makes minimal references to agriculture and farming, and this is a concern, and that the importance of agriculture goes way beyond purely economic visits. One of the things that this is from the group, the farmers group that we consulted in Holme Village, and they were quite clear that to silo off thoughts about what agriculture and farming can do into just economy or just tourism. It's an integrated circular economy, and that needs to be recognised. It's not subsistence or marginal. It's really absolutely integrated into what goes on in the valley. And the contributors give multiple examples, and they felt that these really had to be highlighted. This whole issue of the circular economy and the role of farming and agriculture locally needs to be reflected in relation to the whole of the local plan, but particularly in relation to the Holme Valley. So when we talked to schools, we wanted to get some young voices in here and see what they were thinking about. And as I say, this was a talk, a set of focus groups, which were focusing on two areas: climate action and also farming and food security. So they mentioned local things that they thought could be done and that they thought were missing. So things like composting bins and better recycling. They talked about the need to have advertising for what was being sold locally. They were interested in animal welfare and local sourcing. They talked about the role of education. And I think this sort of highlighted for us one of the things that we need to think about when we're writing up and presenting our cases to Kirklees is the integrated nature, the overlap, if you like, in all these areas. They don't stand alone, and they've got to be seen as connected to each other. And that's a challenge for us, I think, in terms of writing up a report. And maybe we need to think about diagrammatic stuff in here. I mean, these are just ideas at the moment. We're only part of the way through the process. So that was the school's focus groups. And then just a quick one, we did a survey at the local food festival, and we asked people what their priorities were in terms of food for their own use. And it was really quite interesting. And again, this is a fast and dirty thing, and it's it's sheer sheer numbers here. We haven't gone into great detail, but things that people were saying were important to them: quality of food, product range, type of food, and that well. And then when we were asking them about, well, when and how often do you actually buy food from local independent shops? Well, it was about 50-50 really. People who were regularly shopping. So it's only a small sample, but all these small details, I think, or small bodies of information, add to the bigger picture. So what about housing? This is information that came from a really solid group that we have operating locally, and I've shared their website in the list of links later on. A group called Eco Homes, and they were talking about the importance of smaller housing. We're not unique in this, in that we have quite a lot of large houses, a surplus of larger houses, but we're not getting the smaller homes that enable people to downsize, or enable people who are at the start of their purchasing of or renting new properties to get on the housing ladder, if you like. The idea of especially targeted homes. There's some real challenges which I'm sure you're familiar with. And they talked about some specifics in terms of design requirements. So this is coming back to the idea of making sure that we've got information in there, or comments on climate action, and that idea of high quality, sustainable, energy efficient homes being really important. And then, of course, the infrastructure stuff to do with how transport and services link, and those getting in there in the planning. And it's, again, it's not this standalone, but thinking about what the whole provision needs to look like, and being quite explicit about some of the things that we need. So they talked about shared facilities, ideas that they were putting forward that would make things better in terms of planning requirements. So when we were talking about reducing carbon emissions, the response from the review group was, really, this is absolutely essential. And given that 80% of homes needed in the UK by 2050 are already built, we maybe need to have a look at how our housing stock is actually being uprated and made fit for the future, not just focusing on building or new homes. So the last group I'm just going to talk about briefly is the group called River Home Connections, who've done a massive amount of work locally. They're an independent charity. They coordinate, they facilitate. They're very focused on biodiversity, water quality. They work in conjunction with Yorkshire Water, the local authority. So we were really pleased to have them as part of our group, and to contribute to our local plan review update. They put together, as part of the early response, some really key points, really, about, firstly, about encouraging incentives and enforcement of existing land banks that have been approved but not developed. The use of the RHC planning and design project that they developed using DEFRA money has some really concrete information there that the local authority can use. And to say, hang on a minute, we're already working towards improving a rich and diverse and healthy ecosystem. Make sure that that's embedded, that work is embedded into the planning and the review of the local plan. Build on what you've already got, if you like. they also, unsurprisingly, mentioned the 106 monies and how important that can be in term and should be used in terms of securing money for dealing with climate action and carbon footprint. So a small example, well, not so small actually. So River Home Connections, Yorkshire Water and the Environment Agency together are working on a project. It'll take about 10 years to adapt and remove weirs in between Huddersfield and Holme. And this is about migratory food. So this is like drilling down into some of the real small detail of the things that are going on, but are absolutely important to that whole picture of planning and climate action and development. So that's sorry, a cook's tour, really, bit fast and furious, of 3 examples of things that we've used to contribute. So where are we now, and what are we going to be doing next? Well, the timescale, for this work has improved, but anyway, not improved, sorry, has been put back. Each of our section teams has been asked to provide a draft of their, so that's, you know, housing, food, minerals, economy, the whole group have been asked to produce a draft by November 7th, but making sure, going back right to the beginning, climate action considerations are really a primary aspect of this work. And we want to make sure that each section has a reference saying how their element, so farming and food or economy, how climate action is embedded in that. But we also want to make sure that we've got an overview section, and that's work in progress. So we're part of the way along the journey, I suppose. One of the things that we need to do more of is that wider community engagement. The food and agriculture one is the first one we've done, but we anticipate rolling that out in relation to other areas like the economy, for example. There's a lot of work to do. It's a big task for sure, but time is a bit on our side, I suppose, because the deadlines have been put back. But we're committed to ongoing collaboration and broadening community engagement. And so come back to really what the Kirklees officer responsible said, and we will continue to actively engage with them, suggest sites, feedback on policies, and promote awareness and update and do further consultations. Here's some useful links. There are more. More than happy for people to contact me if there's anything they'd like more detail on. If you wanted me to come back when we get further towards the end of the project, or even the end of what we've put together, I'm happy to do that. So that's us at the moment. Here's my contact details. Thank you very much for listening. Anything you'd like to say? Welcome.
Yeah. Well, I've got a whole host of questions, Sarah, but that was brilliant. Thank you so much. I think very, very useful. And my first question is whether I could ship the whole of the local planning authority from here up to Yorkshire to learn and get brainwashed into being helpful members of the local community. That would make a huge difference. But
I think, I mean, I'm sure, I hope, I think, I know, Chris will agree with me. This is Chris Green, who's my colleague on the council. Community engagement, getting messaging out, it's just the hardest thing of all, and it's an ongoing thing, not just in relation to this local plan review, but how do we make sure that people know what's going on and how they can get involved? One of the things I didn't mention is that on the 8th of November, we're doing the second of our big community celebrations. So local community groups coming together. We're lucky that we have a big venue which belongs to the parish council, the civic hall, and we're using that providing stalls for local community groups, but also a stall for ourselves as the parish council and our associated land charity, to enable us to show this work, but also other work too. So yeah, it's the same issue for everybody, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. And one more question, Sarah. You didn't mention anywhere in those slides whether local developers have been involved in these discussions, because I see over and over again the requests for smaller houses, for more affordable houses, for people able to downsize, just as you were saying. But I don't see any developers actually helping out by saying, oh, yes, we've got exactly the right design for that. Are they included in your discussions?
Sorry, we have one. So Eco Homes, who I mentioned, and they were the ones who were talking about the housing needs. So John Queening, who's the one of their people, they have a project which the land charity, which is associated to the parish council, has supported and funded for the building of a small number of houses, just 9 affordable homes for rent in the Holme Valley, and eco-friendly, built to the standards that we laid out there. So we've got one developer so far who's doing that. We would very much hope that other developers would take a lead. It's not been easy. It's been a real challenge, and some people not terribly positive, shall we say. But hey, that's what happens, isn't it? You're not going to get 100% of everybody liking everything you do, if only.
Well, let's move on to other people. So, David, you have a question, please?
Yes. You did a focus group with the schools. How did you do that? Did you hire consultants to do that, or did the school set that up? How did it work?
Well, that's where I suppose that's where my background comes in. I'm an ex-teacher and education lecturer, and did teacher training. So I've got and did quite a lot of research and using focus groups. So I'd got something to build on there. So I contacted the schools and said, this is what we're doing. This is what we'd like to do. We need youth voices in here. Can you set up a group of young people who would be willing to talk to us? I sent them a sort of outline of the sorts of things that we thought we might like to talk to them about. So there was a negotiation going on with the 2 members of staff who were responsible for pupil voice in the schools. So they'd already got established organisations, as many schools do, for enabling children to be able to, young people, to be able to say the things that they're interested in. So we used that forum. And I went and did the focus groups with them.
All right.
Moving on to Stuart, please.
I'd just like to say thank you for that. It's very interesting. And obviously a huge amount of work involved. Having a neighbourhood plan is not a statutory requirement. And I've heard several people recommend that it's actually not worth putting in all the time and effort, that the neighbourhood plan is subservient to the local plan, and any neighbourhood plan has to be compliant with the local plan. So there's not a huge amount of influence there. I really appreciate the amount of work you've done, but sometimes question, is it actually worth it at the end of the day?
Well, that remains to be seen, doesn't it, Stuart?
I mean, what one advantage is that when you have an in-place local plan, you can then claim SIL money. And I think if you've got a neighbourhood plan in place, the council will get 25% of the SIL money, as opposed to 10% if you don't have a neighbourhood plan.
So
that's a pretty big incentive, isn't it?
Yes, as far as I can see, that is one of the main reasons.
As far as our local plan update review is concerned, we decided to link what we'd got in our neighbourhood plan to what we were saying in saying in the update that we're going to present to Kirklees. So we're linking the two things together. It is a bit, I mean, it's a very valid question. Is all this work that we put in, is it worth it? Well, it sort of remains to be seen as far as our contribution to their review, their updating. And I suppose we feel that because they've come back to us and said, we really want to engage with you, we're taking them at their word. And I guess the other side of it is, we know very well, like many other local authorities, they're absolutely strapped for staff. So the work that we're doing, and we have the example already of the conservation group who wrote the management plan and the conservation review for Kirklees because they didn't have any staff. So that we have precedent there about working with and working for and working alongside. But I think the real challenge for us in the Holme Valley is that because we are quite a distinctive and seen as distinctive and different area from other parts of Kirklees, it's the extent to which we get that message through, and the local plan recognises the distinctiveness of different areas and their needs. It's not one size fits all. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. No, that sounds good. Thank you.
Tristram, please.
Yeah, just thank you very much, Sarah. That was excellent. Just in response to Stuart's comment, I'm slightly surprised. I think that having a neighbourhood plan, certainly in our experience in Winchfield, has made a huge difference. And it's because the local council in the local plan has to take a lot of interest, and they have to support the decisions based on what the neighbourhood plans say. So if you've got a neighbourhood plan which says, this is our strategy, the council in the local plan can't say, well, no, we don't agree. It's not consistent with the local plan. We're going to ignore it. So we find it very useful. It gives us huge leverage. But I also wanted to ask Sarah, because in where we are, there's a lot of divergence between the strategy of the district council and the strategy of our parish. So the district council wanted to put a new town, 10,000 houses in this tiny little village, which we were very against because it would cause coalescence with the neighbouring towns, and there's a lot of ancient woodland and biodiversity damage that would be done. So we found ourselves very much in conflict. And when we did the local plan, the inspector said he because of the work we'd done to show that the new town in Winchfield wasn't suitable, and because we'd got it in a neighbourhood plan, he ruled against the council, and he made the council take out their plans for Winchfield. So I wonder, it sounds as if there's no conflict between what you want to do and what the Kirklees Council wants to do. It's very, very different. We were absolutely at loggerheads.
I wouldn't say there's no conflict. I would say that it's an ongoing attempt at lobbying and having conversations and trying to make sure that our local ward councillors are communicating both ways. It's a real challenge because I'm not sure whether this is the way that it's working currently in other authorities, but we have been consistently told, although the direction of travel seems to be changing a bit, that the parish council has no statutory voice in relation to the council. It's viewed in the same way as any other resident. Well, I think that and Chris will correct me if I'm wrong here, there seems to be some small shifts in that direction, and it's the example of the engagement of the person who is responsible for the local plan update with us that gives us some confidence, if you like, in terms of better working together and communication. But whether that will extend to what finally gets written in the local plan update and how that reflects what it is that we've had to say about the very specific needs of the Holme Valley remains to be seen.
Interesting. May we move on to Madeline, please?
Thank you very much, Sarah. I used to live in Upper Thong, so I know exactly where you're talking about.
Oh, well, hi. You know what I'm talking about, yeah.
now I live in the flatlands again down in Cambridgeshire. Interestingly, what Tristram said about Stuart's comment, we have a neighbourhood plan in Buckden, and it has been very useful in terms of the plan for HDC's local plan. HDC are now reviewing their local plan. So what our approach has been to look at our neighbourhood plan, which needed updating anyway, because we adopted that in, again, 2000, I think that was 2020, and we said in it that it would be reviewed in 5 years, so we need to do it. But our take on this is that as soon as the new local plan comes into effect, we want our neighbourhood plan to be ready to go, because that has precedence, in my understanding, over the local plan.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree with Stuart. You can't go against. You can't put things in there which go against the local plan or against the NPPF or anything like that. But you can try and mould it to your particular situation, which is what we are trying to do. And I was quite interested to hear you say about farming and so on, because at the moment we don't have a section for farming and food security in our neighbourhood plan, but it would seem the very sensible thing to do. And also we've been trying to work out how to engage with our small businesses. We've got, in the village, we have a lot of small businesses, painters, decorators, builders, and trying to engage with them. I don't know if you've got any secret way of doing this, but so that we can try and think about them in terms of our neighbourhood plan.
That's a really interesting one, Madeline, because currently we have a town centre development project going on, which is not without its issues, shall we say. Anyway, draw a veil a bit on that one. What it has helped to do is to develop the existing business community group and galvanise their collective activity. So a couple of people who've been quite active in the business community anyway helped set up a Home Firth Business Together group. And it functions largely as a WhatsApp group, but they also work in conjunction with Holme Valley Vision, which was the network group I talked about, and also an organisation, a company actually called Home Firth Forward, which is focusing at the moment on running the local market, which will move to the new site when the town centre develops. So that's a complicated way of saying that there were a couple of people who were really active in driving a business community engagement network, face to face and on WhatsApp, and it's proved really quite successful, and they're now doing so. A colleague of ours who is the lead in Holme Valley Vision, Margaret Dale, who's absolutely brilliant, has said in all the years that she has worked with businesses locally and the local council. She's never seen the sort of collaboration that is now going on. But it took a couple of people really to kick it off, business owners to really kick it off.
Thank you, Sarah. Can we move on to Stuart, please?
Thank you. On a completely different note, I was wondering how many of your farmers practice regenerative agriculture?
I don't know, but I can try and find out.
From a ecological carbon point of view.
Yeah.
Is anyone trying to persuade them?
There are 240 plus NFU members in Kirklees. So I would imagine that there are a number of them, shall we say, who would be able to answer that question and do it. But I don't know the answer, but I can certainly find out, and it would be an interesting addition to our section on farming and agriculture. So thank you for raising that.
Okay, thanks.
David, please.
Yes. Like to get back to engagement, a bit broader than just the point about focus groups. I'd be interested in the ways what you've managed to engage larger numbers of people. The reason I'm asking is because my parish, 2/3 of it has just been entered into the Pride in Place government programme as one of the most deprived areas in the country, and they're going to offer £20 million a year for development. So we've suddenly got lots of interest, and we want to find a way to actually find out from local people what their priorities are. We're thinking even of a big meeting with tables of 10 people and discussion on that. But as you've done more engagement than us, you've probably got better ideas than me.
No, I doubt that, David. All I would say is I think that my experience would be you're not going to get a one-hit wonder. So putting out a survey on Facebook or whatever is useful, but it ain't the whole story. I think you really need to do a whole range of things. So getting local schools interested and engaged, I think, is really quite important, because then that can move out towards parents and guardians and local connections. We have a large number of sports groups operating locally. They can be really useful. We've got a whole list of people and organisations that the parish council has a database, so we can use that to put information and queries out. So I think the simple answer is not one size fits all. Try the different, but use the expertise that you've got locally. There will be people who can run focus groups. There will be teachers who would say, yeah, I don't mind going out and doing a bit of surveying with. And it's every little bit connects together really to create a diverse story. It's not like one story. It's lots of different contributions which make the difference, I think, when you do a consultation. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. Can I just come back to the previous question from Stuart? I don't know why I didn't mention it, about local farmers engaging in eco practices. Well, of course, not of course. Longley Farm, which you may know, they do milk and yogurt and cottage cheese and all sorts of things worldwide, not just nationally. They have a big programme on eco farming, and I can send a link to what they're doing. They're a big organisation, but the Jimmy Dickinson, who is the lead CEO, owner, and his group are extremely proactive when it comes to this area. So I'll fish out a contact for you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions, please? You've obviously wowed us all, Sarah. But I do think that was a really helpful and useful presentation. And I'm very sorry I'm going to have to ask you to come back again in a year to tell us how it's the benefit. But it was fascinating. Thank you.
Well, what I tried to do was to say, this is our experience. This is how we're working on it. We're a big council, you know, there's 23 of us and 12 wards. So it's not a small number of people, but as always, it comes down to the people who are willing to put and have the time. People who have the time to put in. So I'm lucky. I no longer work for money. I can decide to do some work on this. That's not true for everybody, obviously.
No, but it does seem to be that it's true across the entire world almost, that individuals can make an outsized contribution to get the ball rolling. And then once the ball is rolling, the volunteers start coming out of the woodwork, but it's getting started that seems to be the issue. So I found that very rewarding, very informative, and we're about to start doing the same sorts of things down here. So there'll be lots of lessons taken to heart. Thank you very much.
Not at all.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Very good.
If I could just finally say, I should pay absolute credit to Councillor Mary Blacker, who was the chair of the council 2 years ago, but she has absolutely led the work on the local plan and the need to do it. So having somebody who drives things forward from the outset, and Mary is the person responsible for that.
Yeah, thank you. That's good advertisement for her. I will be putting all of this up on the knowledge base, and we'll break out all the leads and the links that you gave, Sarah, including your email address and your phone number. So stand by to be pounded by people. But thank you all very much for joining us. Next week, we're going to be talking about the new local nature recovery strategy that the government is mandating districts to get on with, and what the impact has been in one area, but hopefully there are lessons there for the rest of the country. So I hope that you'll find that fascinating. And in the meantime, thank you all very much for your time, and we'll see you whenever the next time is. Take care.
Thanks very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thanks,
Great.
Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.